Imagine this. You're walking down a crowded street, surrounded by the noise and chaos of the world. Yet, somehow, amidst the hustle, you find yourself still. Your mind, perfectly calm, is unbothered by the clamor around you. It's as though the world moves through you, but you remain untouched. It's an invisible power, this stillness. And in that space, you become aware of something deep within yourself, something primal and untamed. It is the seduction of the feminine spirit, that subtle, magnetic force that doesn't seek, but simply is. It draws people in, not with effort, but with the quiet strength of being unapologetically herself. Carl Jung spoke often of the unconscious, the vast, mysterious territory within us, where our hidden desires and fears reside. He understood that to truly find wholeness, we must dive into that dark, uncharted space and face the parts of ourselves we often avoid. And in that confrontation lies something powerful, the feminine archetype, the one who is not shaped by the world, but shapes the world through an inner, magnetic stillness. The dark seduction of feminine stillness is not a manipulation, nor is it a mere quietness. It is the ultimate expression of strength. A depth of being that transcends the surface and speaks to the core of what it means to be a woman in her most potent form. The stillness is not a void, but a wellspring of power. The depths of the unconscious where her true desires, her purpose, and her wild nature reside. It is in these depths that she is both creator and destroyer, both nurturer and warrior. In a world that constantly pushes women to perform, to speak, to act, to prove their worth through productivity and external validation, this stillness can feel like a threat. It challenges the very essence of modern life, which demands that we be constantly on the move, constantly visible. But there is a truth that the feminine knows: her value does not lie in her actions, but in her essence. Her power is rooted in being, not in doing. This stillness, this magnetic pull, is the realm of the unconscious feminine, the archetype of the anima. She lives in the shadows, often hidden behind the projections of the outer world. And yet, when a woman dares to step into her own stillness, she allows her anima to emerge, no longer confined to the depths of the psyche, but fully alive, fully present, and fully aware of her own power. Consider the concept of projection, the psychological mechanism where the ego, out of fear or misunderstanding, attributes its own unconscious desires onto others. How many times have we seen women, driven by the need to be seen and validated, project their worth onto others? They seek approval from external sources, hoping to fill the empty space within. But the feminine stillness teaches a different lesson. It reveals that no amount of external validation can fill the void, because the void is not empty at all. It is filled with the deep knowing of one's own worth. This is where the dark seduction begins. The feminine, when she understands her own worth, no longer seeks approval. She no longer feels the need to chase or manipulate. She chooses. And in that choice, she becomes a magnet, not through force, but through the quiet strength of her presence. Her stillness becomes her seduction. It is a magnetic pull that draws others not because of what she does, but because of what she is. This is the paradox of the feminine in her deepest form. She is simultaneously soft and hard, receptive and assertive, nurturing and destructive. She holds both the light and the darkness within her. And the more she is able to reconcile these dualities, the more powerful her stillness becomes. For it is only in embracing her darkness, the parts of herself that society often deems unacceptable or weak, that she can embody her full power. The feminine stillness is not passive. It is not a retreat into the shadows. It is an invitation to enter a space of profound emotional and psychological depth. It is an invitation to explore the unconscious, to embrace the shadow, and to come into full contact with the untamed, primal parts of the self. When a woman steps into this space, she no longer lives in reaction to the world. She becomes the world. She is the force that shapes her reality. Do you feel it? That pull within you, the desire to step into your own power. To stop seeking and start choosing? You are not here to chase validation. You are here to embody your truth, to stand still in your own power, and to watch the world move around you, in awe of the force you exude without lifting a finger. The seduction is not in your actions, but in your presence. And that, my dear, is a force that no one can resist. As she stands in her stillness, the feminine becomes the embodiment of the paradox. She is both the calm at the center of the storm and the storm itself. In that stillness, she is neither submissive nor passive. She holds the space, quietly asserting her presence, commanding respect not through force or manipulation, but through the quiet power of her own being. This is the power of the anima, the feminine principle within every person, not confined to women alone, but to the essence of creation itself. She is the primal, the sacred, the intuitive. And she is often feared because she cannot be controlled, cannot be pinned down. The masculine principle seeks to conquer, to dominate the outer world. But the feminine seeks to weave the fabric of existence with patience, with presence, and with an understanding that goes beyond logic or reason. To embody the feminine stillness is to step into a place of deep emotional integrity, a place where the unconscious self is allowed to surface without the pressure of societal expectations or external approval. It is in this space that a woman begins the process of individuation, Jung's term for the journey of becoming one's true, whole self. In this journey, the ego dissolves its false facades, its masks, and comes into alignment with the deeper self. And this is where the dark seduction of the feminine stillness lies. It is in the process of individuation that a woman learns to trust herself, to understand her own inner landscape, and to hold space for her truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. In the world of modern relationships, where power dynamics are often skewed and the balance of control is distorted, the feminine stillness offers a different kind of power, one that does not demand, but instead invites. It is a quiet strength that compels attention not because of loudness or attention-grabbing antics, but because of its depth. A woman who knows how to hold this space can be with anyone, yet not give herself away. She can love deeply, yet never lose herself in the process. She can be soft, but she is not weak. She is the calm eye of the hurricane, able to watch the chaos unfold around her without ever losing her center. But what does it mean to lose that center? It means to fall prey to the projection of others. When a woman is unaware of her own power, when she is disconnected from her own essence, she becomes a vessel for the projections of the world. She becomes the image of what others want her to be, molding herself to meet expectations until she is lost in the effort to please, to perform, to satisfy. In this space, the feminine energy is corrupted, diluted, and drained. The quiet power of stillness becomes overshadowed by the need to be seen, the need to be needed, the need to do. This is why shadow work, the conscious effort to engage with the unconscious parts of ourselves, the parts that we often avoid or deny, is essential for the feminine. The shadow is not the enemy. It is the part of ourselves that holds the potential for growth. It is where the untapped power lies. To truly harness the seductive force of feminine stillness, a woman must confront the darkness within, her insecurities, her fears, her wounds, and integrate them into her sense of self. Only then does she transcend the need for external validation, and only then does she reclaim her inherent power. The feminine stillness is also the embodiment of the archetype of the queen. The queen does not seek to be revered. She is already aware of her power. She does not have to prove herself. She is secure in who she is and, as a result, her presence demands respect. Her power is in her ability to remain unmoved by the trivial distractions of life. She is steady, grounded, and unshaken by the transient forces of the world. She chooses to invest her energy only where it is most needed, and she knows that her worth is not determined by the approval of others, but by her own self-recognition. Consider the men who are drawn to this power. They are not drawn to the woman who is constantly performing or seeking their attention. No, they are drawn to the woman who is still. The woman who is grounded in her own sense of worth, who emanates an energy that cannot be imitated or fabricated. It is the very stillness of her being that ignites a quiet obsession. They are magnetized not by her actions, but by the aura of power she exudes, which speaks to a place in their own psyche that longs for depth, authenticity, and purpose. The woman who embodies this stillness becomes a mirror to the unconscious desires of those around her. She reflects their unspoken longings, their deepest fears, and their hidden truths. She is both a seductress and a healer, drawing others in through her presence, while also holding the power to heal and transform through her silence. The very act of being herself becomes an invitation for others to explore their own unconscious realms, to confront their own shadows, and ultimately to become whole. This is the seduction that cannot be resisted, the kind that doesn't rely on tricks or manipulation, but on the deepest truths of the self. It is a seduction that emanates from a woman's soul, drawing others in not because of what she gives, but because of what she is. And when she finally understands her own worth, when she steps into her stillness fully, she becomes the kind of woman who doesn't chase. She chooses. She chooses herself. The deeper a woman journeys into her own stillness, the more she uncovers the layers of her being. But to flow fluid, deep, and unyielding. Yet, in order to allow that flow, she must first create the space for it to move. And this is the paradox. In her stillness, she finds the freedom to be fully alive. At the heart of feminine stillness is a profound connection to the unconscious, the realm of instinct, intuition, and deep knowing. Jung referred to this space as the collective unconscious, a reservoir of shared memories, archetypes, and symbols that influence our behaviors and thoughts. The feminine archetype is intricately tied to this unconscious realm. She is not just a product of her environment. She is the embodiment of something ancient, something that speaks through her, moves through her, and informs her actions in ways that are often beyond conscious understanding. When a woman taps into this, she becomes a conduit for something much larger than herself, a channel for wisdom that transcends time and space. And yet, in today's world, the feminine is often discouraged from listening to this inner voice. Society tells her to be rational, to be logical, to fit into predefined roles. She is taught to silence her intuition, to second-guess her instincts, and to overanalyze every choice. The result is a woman disconnected from her true essence, a woman who has become estranged from the power of her own stillness. But the stillness, when rediscovered, can be like an awakening. It is in the silence that the deepest truths emerge. The mind becomes calm, the emotions settle, and the soul remembers its purpose. It is here, in the depths of the unconscious, that the feminine archetype is most potent. She is not simply a passive observer in the world. She is an active participant in the creation of reality. The feminine has the power to shape and transform through her inner knowing, her ability to flow with the currents of life rather than resist them. She is a force of nature, not to be tamed or controlled, but to be revered. She moves with the rhythms of the world, embodying the ebb and flow of the seasons, the cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. She is the moon, the ocean, the forest, ever-changing, yet constant in her power. The seduction of feminine stillness lies not in her ability to manipulate, but in her profound ability to be, to exist in her full authenticity, without the need for approval or validation. In this space, a woman's energy becomes magnetic, drawing to her those who are ready to witness her truth. There is no rush, no desperation. She is not anxious, nor does she chase. She understands that what is meant for her will come to her, and what is not meant for her will pass by. This is the essence of true power, to be so confident in one's own worth that the external world becomes secondary. The stillness is not just a choice. It is a deep understanding that everything external is a reflection of what exists within. This, however, is not a power that is easily understood or accepted. There are those who will see the feminine stillness as a threat, as something dangerous or elusive. It is a power that transcends conventional understanding. The quiet power of the feminine often goes unnoticed or undervalued. But this does not mean that it is weak. On the contrary, it is precisely because this power is not overtly visible that it is so potent. The true feminine strength lies in her ability to remain unseen and yet remain untouched, untamed, and unyielding. What if you allowed yourself to be still? What if you allowed yourself to simply be, to release the need to prove, to perform, to chase after external validation? Imagine the power you could unlock if you stepped into your own stillness, if you embraced your own inner knowing and allowed the world to move around you, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. In this stillness, the feminine no longer seeks to fill the emptiness with distractions or external pursuits. Instead, she turns inward, embracing the fullness of her own being. She knows that her worth is not determined by what others think of her, but by how she sees herself. She becomes a reflection of her own inner strength. And this strength does not come from striving, from conquering, or from bending the world to her will. It comes from surrender, from a quiet acceptance of herself as she is. It is in this surrender that her power is fully realized. When a woman steps into her stillness, she becomes the embodiment of what Carl Jung described as the self, the whole, integrated being who is not fragmented by the external world, but stands firm in her unity. She is both the light and the shadow, the conscious and the unconscious, the feminine and the masculine. She understands that all these aspects are not opposing forces, but part of the same whole. And in that unity, she becomes unstoppable. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses. She chooses her path, her companions, her dreams, and her reality. She is no longer bound by the constraints of external expectations. She is free to be herself, completely, unapologetically, and powerfully. The allure of feminine stillness becomes even more profound when you understand its role in the process of healing. Healing, in Jungian terms, is not merely the fixing of what is broken. It is the integration of the fragmented parts of the self into a cohesive whole. The feminine archetype, in her stillness, holds the power of this integration. She does not rush to heal, does not force the process, because she knows that true healing can only happen in the quiet moments of self-awareness. It is in stillness that the broken parts of the soul can be examined, acknowledged, and eventually healed. The feminine knows that healing takes time to confront the wounds, time to face the pain, and time to allow for the natural ebb and flow of recovery. In modern relationships, the notion of healing has often been distorted. We are taught to look for a quick fix, a temporary salve to ease the pain. But the feminine, in her wisdom, understands that healing is a journey, not a destination. It requires patience, self-compassion, and most of all, stillness. It is in this stillness that she can truly hear the whispers of her soul, can feel the pulse of her body, and can access the deep wisdom that lies within her. When a woman has truly healed, she does not do so in a loud, dramatic fashion. Her healing is quiet, subtle, and transformative. She heals by becoming more herself, by stepping into the fullness of who she is, without fear or apology. The dark seduction of feminine stillness also reveals its connection to the concept of boundaries. The modern world often expects women to give endlessly of their time, their energy, their emotions. But the still, powerful feminine knows that to give freely, one must first protect their own energy. She is the guardian of her own boundaries. And she understands that her stillness is a form of self-care. To embrace stillness is to draw a line in the sand, to say, "This is where I begin, and this is where you end." She no longer allows the external world to invade her inner sanctum, nor does she compromise her values or her worth to please others. She becomes the master of her own energy, choosing when to give and when to conserve. This is not selfishness, it is self-preservation. The feminine who understands this principle knows that to be truly giving, she must first be whole. She does not deplete herself in service of others, but instead creates a balance between giving and receiving. This balance is what makes her so magnetic, so alluring. She does not give to seek validation. She gives because she has an abundance of love, of wisdom, of energy to share. Her giving is a choice, not an obligation. But what does it mean for the feminine to choose herself? It means that she no longer seeks validation from external sources. She no longer chases after fleeting moments of approval, nor does she allow herself to be defined by the projections of others. Instead, she draws her strength from within, from the deep well of her own soul. The feminine who chooses herself stands in her power, unshaken by the opinions or judgments of others. She knows her worth, and it is not negotiable. To choose oneself is an act of profound self-love. It is not an act of arrogance or self-centeredness, but of deep respect for one's own being. When a woman chooses herself, she is honoring her own needs, her own desires, and her own truth. She no longer seeks permission to take up space in the world. She simply is. She chooses to be unapologetically herself, regardless of the expectations placed upon her by society or by others. This choice is not always easy. It requires courage to stand in one's truth, to be authentic in a world that often demands conformity. But the woman who chooses herself is the one who is most at peace, for she has stopped chasing after validation and has instead begun to radiate a quiet confidence that is undeniable. Her power does not come from the need to be seen or admired. It comes from the deep knowing that she is already whole, already complete. The more a woman chooses herself, the more she embodies the feminine archetype in its most powerful form. She is not driven by external validation. She is driven by an inner sense of purpose, an inner knowing that cannot be shaken. She does not need to perform or prove herself. She simply is, and in that being, she becomes a force that is unstoppable. And so, the dark seduction of feminine stillness remains, ever present, waiting for the woman who is ready to step into her full power. It is a force that cannot be ignored, for it is not the loud, brash seduction of the world's expectations. It is the quiet, magnetic pull of a woman who knows herself, who is not afraid of her own darkness, and who understands that true power lies in being still, in being grounded, and in being fully alive. She is the quiet seductress, the one who does not chase, but who simply chooses. And in her choosing, she creates her own reality, unshaken by the turbulence of the world. She knows that her worth is not determined by what others think of her, but by the quiet, unshakable knowing that she is worthy, just as she is. The woman who